with another digital lunchbox, and today we're going to be talking about how to approach reopening your business post COVID-19. So, especially here in Minnesota, we have the governor insinuating that maybe businesses are going to be opening here soon. And I think hopefully, fingers crossed, nationwide, we can slowly start making the transition into reopening these businesses, the economy in a safe way. So we are here to kind of just chit chat about that a little bit, talk a little bit about the strategy surrounding reopening, and here to answer any questions. As a reminder, we do these digital lunchboxes Tuesdays and Fridays from 12 to 12:30, and then it's also on our podcast. So with that, let's see, who wants to start? If we had a client who is saying that they are about to reopen, particularly in maybe our niche verticals like medical or higher ed, how would we advise them? You know, what trends are we seeing across these verticals related to COVID?
Yeah, well, first of all, nothing is ever going to be exactly the same, or at least, not right now. We don't want to make it sound like, okay, everyone, it's free for all. Welcome back to 3 months ago. So we have to keep that in mind, and keep in mind the people that we serve as businesses and what their psychology is, what their needs are. That it's not going to be the same. So that has to be put out right front and center right now. But with that, what do other folks think? Andy, Tyler, do you have other thoughts?
Yeah, just to build on what you're saying, that it's really easy to assume that people will naturally figure out when you're reopened again, or whether you've changed your way of doing business from what you were doing during the shutdown. So, we're all accustomed to seeing these COVID-19 advisories, and everybody's got a banner on their site now and so forth. Think about all the different ways that you're going to get out and reach your audience and let them know, hey, here's what's changed between this week and last week. We're now operating on a different basis. Here are some things that you should be doing now or thinking about, or where we can help you in different ways than we could have helped you during the shutdown. So to the extent that anything has changed, don't be shy about letting your audience and your potential customers know what's changed and how they can do business with you now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think right now a lot of businesses are still in that respond mentality, still trying to maybe even figure out how they need to adapt to COVID. And it's I think going to be very challenging for those businesses especially to shift their thinking to think about how do we begin rebuilding. With Minnesota opening up another, I think, 100,000 more jobs on Monday, and potentially extending the shelter-in-place orders, but with those at this point slated to expire on May 4th, we really need to be, thinking like now is the time. The time to be responding is quickly coming to an end. And like Andy, you were saying, things as simple as like, are you open? What safety precautions are you taking? Those are the things that you really need to be getting in front of consumers now, as well as a little bit of that brand awareness, running just some display ads and things like that for cheap, just to keep your brand top of mind, and hopefully try and reach your audience, your customer base from before, and make sure that as many of them as are possible know what your plans are for the after.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I would love to, as a consumer, receive almost like reassurance from these businesses before I go back that they have practices in place and steps in place to keep me safe and keep the business going. And I agree with you, what you said, that I don't know if it's ever going to go back to normal. You look at a lot of the economy and consumer behavior post wars, for example, or post, big tragedies, and it never really goes back. People kind of change forever. And I could definitely see that happening with customer behavior here. So how do you get insights from your customers as to what types of reassurance and what types of precautions they want to see you taking?
Well, you can always test different messages if you are doing the you know, the awareness advertising, like Tyler mentioned. There are different ways of testing different messages. Of course, you can, you know, if you go about it in the right way and you have really, you know, close to the vest customers that you trust, you could talk to them, or friends, you know, just talk to other people, humans, and you know, that's the data that we have right now. Is it's all changing, it's all new. So just talking to people. What else would you folks say, Andy, Tyler?
Yeah, well, you saw my
Uh,
thunder as far as talking to people. I mean, that's conventionally the best way to find out what's going on with your customers, talk to them, survey them, gather data, but that's a touchy right now. People are not necessarily in the mood to be poked and prodded. Hadley, to your point, they want to be reassured. So to some degree, we have to either we have a kind of a advisory council or a kitchen cabinet of customers that we can kind of call up and informally say, what do you, you know, how are you doing? What do you need to hear? What are you hearing, you know, from other businesses that you find reassuring, and taking that in as anecdotal data. But then also making some educated guesses, putting yourself in the place of the customer, thinking and searching online as you think your customers would be doing, and seeing what comes up and what kinds of messages that you're getting, and then gut check. Are you reassured by those messages? Do they seem self-serving? Do they seem a little cynical or opportunistic, which obviously you want to avoid? This is basically the time to reassure people that yes, we're either still open for business or expanding our basis for doing business. And that you can feel confident coming to us, and we'll tell you exactly how it's going to work now. So yeah, I think definitely getting that human interaction and getting it straight from the customer's mouths, and several different ones that you trust, is probably going to be the platinum standard for this.
if you have a friend, which we all do, and I can say this because I'm one of them, who's a bit of a clean freak, go ask them, you know, what would it take for you to feel comfortable coming into my establishment in person once, you know, the government says that it's okay to do that. And, you know, take that to heart, and you follow through on as many of the things that, you know, those types of people are sharing with you. Because if you're playing to them, which, you know, I'm going to use the word extreme again, because I'm one of those people. If you're playing to that extreme viewpoint, then you're surely covering the people who are less concerned about it. And that's just an added trust factor or indicator for you, that to those people, like, wow, this business, this company, this person really cares about me and my well-being. They're doing these steps. You know, so it's a win-win across the board, even if not everyone coming into your location is going to be equally, you know, on heightened alert.
And in many cases, I mean, it's certainly true in Minnesota, and I think it's true for virtually every state or a locality where businesses are reopening on some restricted basis. There are guidelines for what you have to do in order to reopen, and those are publicly posted by the state of the Minnesota Department of Health or other organizations charged with that. So knowing that those are out there, to some degree, it's incumbent on business to basically say, we are doing a lot. We know we have to do all these things to reopen. Let's make sure that we inform the public of it, because the public may or may not be going and spending time pouring through all of the, you know, the latest declaration on businesses reopening in XY state. So, you know, take it down to the level of your customers. Yeah, I've got this on board. I have to do these things. I'm required to, and they make good sense to do in this environment. Let me make sure that my customers know from, you know, again, personally, what this is going to mean for them.
Yeah, those are very timely comments, because Katie, our business manager, and myself, we were talking about this just before we started this call. We were talking about the different grocery stores we've been going to and which one we feel the most safe at. And, you know, she's been to one of the big box stores and she's like, I don't think I'm going back there. And I've been to another one of the stores and I said, yeah, they didn't even have, you know, hand wipes out for me to wipe the cart. I don't think I'm going back there. And we literally were exchanging, just speaking to each other. This is where we should be doing our grocery shopping, because from my experience, this is the most safe place. And I think that that's where brand becomes so important, right? You need to become trusted, because word of mouth is a really big thing right now. everyone's on these calls, these Zoom calls, everyone's talking to each other because everyone's craving that human interaction. And being able to have your brand be the one that other people are recommending is going to be so important. So how do you really build that trust with your digital strategy? How do you get that message out? Is this where your buyer personas maybe come into play, or how do you speak to them? Tell me more about that.
So targeting, I mean, for one thing, digital platforms allow for a tremendously refined targeting in some cases, depending on what kind of business you're in. Facebook has got some amazing targeting, particularly for B2C. LinkedIn excels on the B2B side. So being able to craft certain messages for certain types of audience segments or personas, and then creating the posts around those. And you can create, you might have an organic post that's kind of a one size fits all that you just put up that everybody can more or less read, and your subscribers or your normal followers see it. But then in addition to that, you might do a boosted post, and it doesn't have to be a break the bank exercise, but it might be an educational post or a short video. And then you might target the messaging and shift it 3 or 4 different ways, depending on whether you're talking to C-suite people or whether you're talking to small business owners. There's a variety of ways that you might couch that makes it feel more like you're dialed into who the audience really is. And in fact, you're really considering how is this message going to be received by, say, someone in a larger corporation versus a smaller corporation, or how's it going to be received by a certain demographic of customer, by middle management versus entry-level people, et cetera. So there's a lot of different ways. How's it even going to be received region by region? In one state maybe that has an aggressive business reopening policy, and maybe another that has a more restrictive one, and being able to segment that way. So thinking about all the different ways that you can use ad targeting really as message targeting to some degree, to speak reassuringly to different audience segments that are important to your business.
Yeah, and I would add, buyer personas. Like I said, everyone is not the same. Everything is not the same. So we can sit and theorize about, okay, who are these people? What do they really feel right now? But without the data, we're not doing good research, and it's probably not going to yield great results. But then, as Andy's talking about, okay, well, people don't want to be surveyed. So the closest thing I think we have to data right now is just testing different messages. And of course, you have to own up to those messages as a brand. If it's about truly caring for people and taking care of them and their safety and health, you have to do that. But the way you communicate that and relate to your buyers, we do test value propositions through ads sometimes. So that might be our best data right now in some circumstances. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and I think, testing the messaging at kind of each of the levels within your funnel is going to be important. At the top of the funnel, you're looking strictly to right now let people know either A, we're open,
Yep,
or B, we're going to be opening on such and such a date. Just strictly awareness of whether or not you're doing business, and if so, when that's happening. Testing a couple of variants on that messaging to see what's going to resonate the most with small spends to start, and then once you identify a winner, expanding that budget. At the kind of the next step down, once people have come to your site, or that they've interacted with your brand, you could do this through retargeting, through using like Facebook or LinkedIn, people who have already interacted with and like and follow your brand. Those are the people who are going to be a bit more engaged, and that message then becomes here are the things we're doing to help you feel safe. Here are the ways that we're modifying our business so that you can continue to support us, and looking even further down, if you're B2B, here's how we're schedule a virtual call instead of meeting us. So thinking about those messages and how they will shift further down the funnel, and then within each of those kind of segments, you can be doing that A/B or multivariate testing on the messaging to see what's resonating best. And the tricky thing here is that's going to change. Recognizing that you're trying to hit a very fluid target at this point. The messaging that's going to work right now isn't going to be the messaging at each of those levels that's going to work in 3 weeks. That's how rapidly things are changing. And so just keeping an eye on that and giving yourself a little bit of, I think, grace to say like, okay, I'm going to try this and it might fall flat. Just recognizing that that's what we're all dealing with.
Mhm.
And building that level of, acceptance into your plans will be really important.
This is kind of
Um,
territory for all of us, right?
Absolutely. And, the folks with multiple locations or franchises, those folks have like this complexity, but on, like to the N degree,
Mhm.
right? So, we had talked earlier about how the restrictions may vary state by state or, municipality by municipality. Making sure that you're providing those updates, to the local audiences, not just a blanket, but you then need to be thinking about what's my communication plan for this location, not just my overall brand, but this location. And that's where things like Google, the GMB platform, and things like that are going to be really important. Making sure that you're posting those updates regularly to your business page there. Making sure that you're updating your hours and using Google's tools that indicate when these changes are happening specific to COVID. They're helping to prioritize those changes so that they're making their way into the search results pages sooner. And when we think about, say, a restaurant or something, where you're going to have that type of hours-based data in multiple platforms, Yelp, your reservation system, your takeout, system, making sure that it's coordinated and updated across all of those consistently, and that messaging is being pushed out through all those different platforms as well, will be really important. The last thing you'd want to do is have, those not be in line and then create confusion amongst your users, which, they get frustrated and then they leave and go somewhere else because someone else did it right. And, they can reliably order from or interact with that brand better. So don't miss those opportunities as well.
Right. I think focusing on local is a really great point. And I'm sitting here thinking where I would go for different services that I rely on and where I would look to check. So for my dentist office, I might look at Google My Business or maybe my email inbox. Maybe they emailed me directly, or, if I'm a college student, maybe I'm looking on social, or if it's for e-commerce and I want to go order a dog toy, I want to see on their website that like I'm still going to get this. It's not back ordered. I need some of that reassurance. So it's interesting. It does kind of need to be across all platforms because you don't know where people are going to look. And the last thing people need right now is more confusion, to your point, because we're all already doing the best we can just to manage all of the data that we're being given already. Data from the news and things like that. So is there anything that businesses should be avoiding right now? What shouldn't they do?
For me, it comes back to that misalignment of messaging across these different
Mhm.
platforms. You know, personally, I've run into that where information on shipping times and things, something really simple like that, wasn't updated on a product listing, and that led me to requesting refunds for something and going to a different business because I felt misled. So really just making sure again that your message is consistent and that you're looking at those details across all of these different digital properties to ensure that you're speaking with one voice and that the information is correct. You know, those small errors really at this point breed mistrust, even if it's an honest mistake. And you know that is something that really you can't afford at this point in time.
Yeah, and I would also say, don't ignore social media because that's where a lot of people are right now. Even if it's as simple as, replying to people who mention you on Instagram or putting a post up that says, "Hey, we're here," that's so important right now. And it's called social media for a reason when people are looking for activity and proof that something social is happening at your business, then that's where a lot of people go.
That's a really good point.
On a slightly more maybe technical level, one of the pieces of advice I'm a reader, I'm sure a lot of people are who are in measurement of Avinash Koshik's blog, and he talks about things that should be stopped and started. Avinash Koshik is a sort of a senior digital and analytics strategist for Google, who's been around for the past couple of decades and very, very wise in these things. And he says one of the things to not worry about right now is just don't try to get hung up on targeting and geographic measurement, because everything is so varied right now with different regions and states and different in flux with opening and closing and so forth, that's not, that kind of geo-testing, geo-targeting is probably not going to really be very effective. So if you're doing any of that, that's probably something that you would want to press pause on for the moment. There are other types of targeting that, we talked about in terms of where people are in the funnel and some other things that are obviously really good for segmentation, but geography right now is not going to be terribly useful. So I think keeping that in mind, and also not getting too hung up about changing all your KPIs just because we're kind of in this period and thinking, oh, I've got to have different KPIs and so forth. I mean, yeah, if you've got a couple of short-term things that you're doing and you want to track effectiveness, you've got some new landing pages or some conversions that are specific to this point in time, sure, but don't just throw out all the data that from what you were doing before or disregard it. We will eventually come back around to some new normal. It won't be exactly like the old normal, but if you think through even just where we were relative to the financial crisis of a few years ago, eventually these things do fade in the rearview mirror and you get back to working on some basis with that knowledge of what happened and sort of a different set of reflexes. So it's not wise to completely upend all of your data and measurement just because this is happening. This is a big blip and an important blip, but it is a blip. So do kind of maintain those long-term tracking and trending if you're doing that kind of measurement.
Yeah, speaking of long-term, can these short-term strategies still add to your long-term goals? You just mentioned you don't necessarily need to go change all your KPIs, but at the same time, your buyer personas may be different. So how can you make sure that you're still streamlining for your business end goal here?
Well,
I think that
go ahead.
I think that for most of us, hopefully what is going to come out of this for business, business owners and folks who are managing businesses is the idea of remaining agile. And you don't necessarily, like Andy's saying, throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, well, we can't get here anymore. Just maybe the path to getting to that place is a little bit different. For most of the businesses that we work with, that's going to be the case. And so while these exercises in the immediacy to address this hopefully short-term issue, that's practice on implementing and staying agile, and really regularly getting in the habit of asking yourself what's truly important here, and are the things that we're doing really leading to value in the end for our business. That's again assuming that your end strategy is correct. If you are indeed a business where you're saying maybe I really do need to reassess where we're trying to get, I think that the short-term pivots that you're making now are opportunities to be gathering that data to help you inform whether or not you do need to change your end goal, and if so, where that needs to start shifting. So it's not, I wouldn't look at this as throwaway work or anything. To me, this is just an opportunity to trim the business where things just aren't working, and be a little bit more okay with experimenting and trying something on a small scale and being okay with that potentially failing, because you're learning things from that.
Mm-hmm. And we all are learning, so I love that. Embrace the change. Seth, did you have something to add?
Oh, that's sufficient right there.
Well said, Tyler. Well, what else can we cover? Is there anything, have you guys been approached by a client who's struggling during these times, and how have you advised them? Or have you been approached by someone who's like, hey, we're getting ready to open our doors, and what are some of the first questions they ask you?
Well, everyone's struggling to some degree, very varying degrees, and to that point, it's hard to have a generalized answer. So, we have to craft those answers to the specific situation. Sounds like a platitude, but it's important, and everything about their messaging, everything we're saying, it's individualistic, it's unique. Don't say what everyone else is saying. In these uncertain times, blah blah blah, insert your message. All the answers, all the messaging, all of that is pretty individualized right now. What do you think, Andy and Tyler?
Well, I was going to say that two things that businesses I'm seeing doing, and we've got in one case, just had a conversation this morning with a client that has, I'm going to take a step back and say, so one of the strategies is, do you have an asset, or do you have something that's truly of value that you can share with your audience, which is just good content marketing practice, whether there's a pandemic going on or not. But particularly important that sometimes when business slows down, you can take stock and say, well, I don't have time, or I'm not able to do all the things that I normally do, and I'm not making money, or I'm not getting very many customers in the door. But what I can do is take a step back and think about what my customers really need and create a resource of some kind for them. In the case we're talking about here, it's without naming names, it's a very exciting data visualization that allows people to see, and it's very timely. It allows people to assess risk, relative to their geography and so forth. So having an asset like that and saying, we're not able to do business as normal, but we can go all in on something like this because this is probably something that people will really benefit from. We can share this. We can go maybe a little bigger than we normally would. Maybe it would have just been one more campaign and not gotten a lot of attention, but this is a pretty cool thing. It's a way for us to get on everybody's radar and stay relevant. And so that's one strategy. Another strategy you see is for businesses that are really time boxed by this and just simply can't be open. So beauty salons, dental offices, or others are, in some cases, banking customers. They're offering special reopening, sort of beyond the next wave deals. So get people in and say, yeah, we are going to be reopening. Obviously, that's going to be dependent on state guidelines, et cetera. But when we do, we have this special incentive for you to come in and come back to us, whether that's 50% off, or a free nail treatment, or whatever that's going to be. Something that enables people to sort of stay in your camp and look forward to that time when they can come back and do business with you again. And then essentially, when you open, you then have a source of immediate customers that are in the bank, as it were, that you can begin drawing on.
Well said.
Well said. Well, we are about at time. So just a quick recap, some of the great points I think you guys made today. Think about what your customers really need. Focus on your brand. Don't say what everyone else is saying. I heard a commercial come on the other day that said, in these uncharted times, or in these troubled, and I just cringed. I'm like, I've heard it too much. Test messaging. Cover all of the platforms, stay consistent so that when people are coming to look for you, they can get that message and that reassurance that they need. Embrace change, remain agile, be empathetic, be reassuring, and just be human. I think those are really great points. Thank you guys so much. And we'll be back here next Tuesday at 12 o'clock.